Hi, everyone. It's S.J. Thomason with Christian-apologist.com, or I'm the People's Apologist. I've been called that by somebody, or Psalm 23 Apologetics. I'll just keep naming myself all different kinds of names. And I'm here with none other than G-Man. And G-Man is a Christian. He and I have been on each other's channels quite a few times, and we like to review debates. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to review a debate that was on Friday night at the Modern Day Debate between Matt Dillahunty, who's an atheist, and a Christian called Ben Fisher. And I think Ben Fisher might be a philosopher or something like that because his arguments were very philosophical. And so without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce G-Man.
How's everybody doing today? I hope everybody's having a great day today. I really enjoy reviewing these Dillahunty conversations / debates too, because it gives us an opportunity to critique them and to show people why on a theistic side we think what he's saying is ludicrous and makes sense doing it. So hope everybody's having a great day, and I hope you guys enjoy the show.
Yeah, thank you. And I wanted to just answer a question before we go over to our screen. Stripper Liquor says, did you view the discussion between Dillahunty and Jordan Peterson? And I did. I saw that. And I wanted to point out something that Dillahunty capitalized on, but that I thought wasn't really fair. Dillahunty was talking about there's no, or the atheist humanists, and he was trying to talk about that there's been no atheist government that's been dangerous to people. And of course, Jordan said, well, of course there has been. The USSR, China, and Cambodia are atheist governments that have resulted in the slaughter of 120 million people. And then suddenly Dillahunty shot back and he said, no, they're not humanist atheists. And so it was kind of I thought that was sort of a really unfair sort of thing. Did you happen to see the Jordan Peterson debate?
No, I didn't, and I wish I would have, because it doesn't matter what type of atheist, what flavor of atheist is. Those nations were atheistic in nature. You know what I mean? Stalin's policy was riddled in the fact that there wasn't no God. And Mao's policies was riddled in the fact that there was no God. So they can't get away from that. They want to try to make it sound like that if they had an atheistic society, that everything is going to be hunky-dory, lovey-dovey. We can see how they behave on the internet to know that that's not true.
Yeah, and you still don't have a Twitter account, do you? I think you're getting away. I think that's probably the smartest thing that you've done, because I have to say it's just a cesspool of awful people sometimes. So that's pretty wise of you.
Mendez is here.
Oh yeah, hi Ozzy, man, Ozzy. So
one of these days you should do I've talked to him one-on-one before. You should think about doing a one-on-one with him one day.
Ozzy, he can come in here if he wants. We could always let him in here if he wants to help us talk about it. So, yeah, I saw Ozzy. I forgot. I did see you in the audience when at the Dillahunty Peterson debate, and I remember you asked something like, if there are no true atheists. I think you said something like that, and I think Peterson says if you live atheism out to its full extent, you wouldn't want to be that person if you lived it all out. I think Peterson said something like that. I forget. In fact, that might even be a better one than the Dillahunty debate to review, but maybe we'll have to do that another week.
We can do that on my YouTube channel. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen and bring us up with part of this debate. So we're going to start at right around the 33-minute mark. So here we go. Just make sure I got the audio on. Okay. Okay, can you see that?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so here we go. And then the funny thing is now I'm also in the chat in this debate, trying to cause a lot of trouble. So that'll be kind of funny. You'll see that. Just trying to put my proof out there. Okay.
He finds these people out there that he knows he can like go toe to toe with, because they basically say the same things that everybody else says. But when somebody's a little creative, he likes to try to avoid them. You know?
Yeah, I thought Ben Fisher was a little bit creative. He was looking at the source of knowledge. He was talking about those sorts of things. But I think that Dillahunty actually made a pretty good response to this. So I figure we'll dig into what Dillahunty's saying more than what Ben was saying here, if that sounds, because he's saying the question is there evidence for God? Is there good evidence for God? To me, the answer is yes. There's extremely strong evidence for God. So I know that you think the same. So all right, so let's go. Oh wait, let me just change this one thing here. I want to change it so we can see the screen. Okay, there we go. Okay, so here we go.
It's only when the entirety of the picture is there that you truly can say, yes, this puzzle is done correctly. But at 50%, you can still say, I'm completely confident or 90% confident about this, and I have a reasonable understanding of this portion of it. it's not an all or nothing thing. So we have observations, we gather facts, we build a model, we test the model. Is it falsifiable? Is it replicatable? And this represents the best we can do to try to come up with a
stop there real quick.
Evidence-based.
Yeah.
He's talking about the scientific method and how they go about proving things scientifically. Okay, so he's appealing to science in order to determine if a God who lives outside of time and space is actually existing. So I want to point that out to everybody. That's very important, because one of the frustrating things about debating any atheist, don't matter if they're Matt Dillahunty or you're the guy who deconverted yesterday or whatever, if they force you to use science and you're not good at doing it, you know, it's just going to make you bang your head against the wall. But I believe that it's a dishonest tactic, actually, if you're only trying to get a person to use that to try to show that God exists, especially when the Bible says that is by faith. But we can talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, well, you're talking about something really important here. It's a category error, because if we're looking for the supernatural, we don't look at the natural, and science is all about the natural. It's exploring the natural world. And so to look in science and use scientific methods to discover the supernatural is just faulty.
Yeah.
So actually, that's one of the strongest arguments. I think that brings us to one of the first arguments I would say for God is in the cosmological argument. And so just looking back and saying everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. The cause must be timeless, spaceless, immaterial, intentional, and all powerful. And that leads us right to God, who's both transcendent to the universe, which is outside of it, and immanent, a part of the universe. And he made himself flesh in the form of Jesus Christ, and that's the immanent form of God.
That's right. That is right. Then you can lend that with intelligent design, and then you got really, 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 really strong evidence. But again, we can get to that. Let's
hear
what else he has to say. Okay, Here we go.
Understanding of reality. What counts as good evidence, though? Not just what counts as evidence. We can take all the little pieces of the puzzle, all the bits of information that we're trying to explain. The facts that we're trying to explain are not the evidence. So there's a fact, which is a change in allele frequency over time, that evolution as a factual observation occurs. Things change. Then the question then becomes, hey, do they change enough to warrant to support speciation? And yes, we see evidence for that. And
I want to jump on that really quickly, because something that Matt and a lot of atheists don't want to acknowledge is our source of consciousness and how suddenly beings became sentient. And so that's a big question that biologists haven't been able to answer. And I also want to point out something that you're going to love from Hugh Ross's book, and I'm going to do that in just a second. But do you have thoughts or comments on Dillahunty here?
Let him talk about his scientific method, and let him talk about how he knows that the allele frequencies change and all that. Let him talk about that a little bit longer, because I want to get into morality. I know you were talking about consciousness earlier, but I want to get into the topic of morality. But I want to hear what he has to say first before I go into my argument for the existence of God using morality.
Okay, sounds good.
Easy.
Whoops, wait, sorry. Did you say?
I said, which is easy. So I just want to let him talk a little bit longer first before we rip him.
Okay, perfect.
Well, what is the explanation for this? What's the best way to describe this? And for the longest time, we may not know, and we may not have a complete model. But what we need to do is, if you have a model that is actually the explanation for the observations, it needs to account for all the facts. It needs to be testable, replicatable, falsifiable. That's science. And before Ben or anybody else tries to say, well, Matt's advocating for scientism. Yeah, I pretty much am, but not necessarily in the way that so many people think so.
Now I'm muted. Now I'm muted.
Yeah.
Now we need to get into this now. See, now, and again, it goes back to the category error that you was talking about earlier, how he is saying that the thing that's going to convince him is science. If God lives outside of time and space and he is immaterial and he is invisible to the naked eye, he can sit back and say, well, how do I know that's God? 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 And he can constantly deny it over and over and over again, using his scientific method, which is only basically used to test the things in the natural world. You can use the scientific method to determine that this is gum that I have in my hand. You can use the scientific method to determine that this is a phone and how you can use it, how it was put together and everything, because you can see it. But when something lives outside of time and space and interacts with the material and physical world, you have to use something other than science. Science can point to God. Science can show us how God did it. But science is never going to be able to be like, okay, this is how we know that he exists, the end or whatever. when in reality, we're supposed to be doing something that what the Bible talks about, and that's faith. You know what I mean? And we can test him by faith. There are several claims in the Bible that says that you can test God doing this, you can test him doing that. Like, for example, we can do it with prayer. We can do it with knowing that every man, woman, and child on the planet are sinners. All we have to do is look at what the definition of sin is, the actions of sinners, and then look at every human being that's on the planet right now and see what they're actually doing. And we're going to see that they're sinners. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I want to point out something, though, that's from Hugh Ross's book. You're going to really, this is just unbelievable. So this is a book called Weathering Climate Change. I'm interviewing him on my channel, actually, coming up on the 2nd of November on a Monday. But this Weathering Climate Change is fascinating. So here's, if you can see, can you see these charts?
Yes.
Okay, so you can kind of see the chart. This is a chart going back 400,000 years, and you can see the volatility here in the Antarctic temperatures. This is a temperature record. And so they traced it all the way back by going through the ice, and they look at that sort of stuff. Now, here's what happened. If you can see this line, see how all of a sudden it starts going like this across straight? Like tons of volatility all the way up until about 10,000 years ago. Okay. What's crazy about this whole thing about 10,000 years ago, suddenly everything is not volatile at all. Well, that's exactly when we start having historical records, when humans, because we weren't living in such horrific conditions, when the climate was so volatile, humans were actually able to start cities and towns and have ourselves recorded. So this, to me, speaks of God. I mean, look at the volatility prior, and then suddenly with humans, I mean, I just think that that God is holding the climate steady for us. And I think that if Matt wants to see science, this is science. This shows me evidence of God in a really big way.
Let me say this too, SJ. If you talk to the average atheist, they will tell you, and Matt Dillahunty will say this too. Did you know that science cannot, apparently, according to them, science can't prove anything 100%? Science can't even prove that according to them, science can't even prove that you exist 100%. So it's a setup. It's a setup to get you to that, because they got X amount of facts and so many things that they can test to show that you're a real person. It's not faith. The reality is, if a person doesn't believe in something, if a person can't prove something 100%, it's not science. It's actually faith in which a person believes. Like, for example, I'm sitting on this chair here, for example, right? Okay. There is scientific evidence. Let me make sure everybody can see this here. This is the chair that I'm sitting on here. Okay. There is scientific evidence. Just pretend like you guys didn't see me sitting on this earlier. But there is scientific evidence, ladies and gents, that if I sit on this chair, it will be able to hold my weight. Okay? Scientists have tested this chair to see if it can hold my weight. Where faith comes in is this. I wasn't there. The scientists were. They made the claim. I trust in them. So I'm going to trust in them, and I'm going to sit on the chair. So I use my faith to show that this chair can actually do what it says it's going to do. When Matt Dillahunty's sitting there saying science, 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 you understand what I mean? I think what he's doing, he's playing a word game, and he's replacing faith with science. Again, he keeps saying that, okay, take into account that science doesn't prove anything 100%, and then take into account that with their scientific method, you know what I mean, for evolution, speciation, and all of that, none of them can prove that, for example, that you and I are related to a cow, or that we share a common ancestor with a cow 100%. They can't do it. It is faith, not science. You know what I mean, that they have in this. He's using a method that he knows is flawed, and that he knows it can't test the supernatural world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it can test this. But even if he wants to use science, now here's just we've already talked about the cosmological argument, and you've alluded to some of the other arguments. Like in our DNA, if you look at our DNA and you realize that consists of well-ordered letters. The letters are, of course, nucleotides, but they're well-ordered letters, the A, C, G, and T. If you look at our DNA, there's over 3 billion of these well-ordered letters. So it's, in other words, it's like saying that a Bible was written, it's DNA code, and to say that there's no coder seems rather ridiculous, don't you think? It's like saying the Bible just wrote itself. All those letters are just organized in the Bible in a really nice way. So that's just pretty ridiculous. And so the same things with our DNA. I think looking at our DNA is scientific evidence. I think looking outside, if I look at the Earth and how Earth compares to, say, Mars and Venus, look at how beautiful our planet is. I think the apprehension of beauty that we have points to God. I mean, the atheists hate when I say this, but look at the trees. Yes, seriously, look at the trees. Look at that. Look outside and ride around on your bike in your neighborhood, like I just did today.
How does a cold-blooded animal go from being a cold-blooded animal to a warm-blooded animal? What are the small changes that happens over a long period of time that causes a cold-blooded animal to be a warm-blooded animal? Because in order for a cold-blooded animal to be related to a cold-blooded animal to be related to a warm-blooded animal, there has to be changes in their mutations for this to happen. And you know, a lot of these people can't even explain. Actually, none of them can actually explain that. And they think by saying "I don't know" is to automatically, get somebody jail free or whatever. But the reality is, they can't prove a lot of things. Like, for example, the new anatomical features that come from random mutations. How DNA, which is code, where you can change a code in a finger to be a feather. The code for a feather is going to be a lot different than the code for a finger. How many changes has to happen for that to happen? And what evidence do we have that it did happen? We have zero. We have nothing.
But even
reasonably believe that we have an intelligent designer who made us with similarities.
I want to read this to you. There's a version of the Bible, the King James version, which I'm sure everyone knows. But there's a line in the Bible that actually kind of alludes to a little bit of evolution. And so it says I don't have the King James version here, but it's Genesis 1:20. And it says, this is the version I have is the NIV, but it says, and God said, let the water teem with living creatures, let the birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky. Now in the King James version, it makes it sound as if the birds are going to come out of the water and maybe even evolve from the beings inside the water. And so it's kind of fascinating if you think about that. I think that there's some truth to evolution and that God could have used evolution in certain ways to get us here. But I don't believe all of the stuff that they think. I don't think we evolved from primordial soup. I think God actually created man, like he said, out of the dust. God created man. And so I do believe that. And so the thing that they like to do too, we're missing a lot of transitory fossils. And so that's another big problem that they don't want to address in a lot of these scientific studies. I mean, they don't talk about that, the lack of that.
Any transitional fossils. You know what they have, SJ? They have aborigines that they have killed, and they pretend that they were Neanderthals or whatever, and they try to say that these are our relatives, when in reality, we know it's a historical fact that they killed all these African men that had bigger skulls and bigger heads, and they're trying to call them Neanderthals, and they don't like talking about that. They don't want to talk about the problems with Lucy, in which they found like 60% of a skeleton, you know what I mean? And then they want to try to make it look like it was like a humanish looking chimp or whatever. It's absolutely ridiculous, some of the things that they imagine into reality. So Matt Dillahunty right now, again, is doing a category error. He's starting us off using the wrong methodology to determine whether or not God is real or not. You know what I mean? Just because he's appealing to scientism doesn't mean we're doing that. You know what I mean? I know when to use science and when not to use it, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. So, okay, here we go. And I'll just say, like I just said, even if like a lot of people do get really torn up about evolution, I think even if God used evolution, that doesn't say the Roman Catholics believe that God used evolution, and they've always believed that, and that's the oldest Christian faith. And so they just believe that God could have worked through evolution and done that. And so that's, I mean, I'm just pointing out that even if God used evolution, that doesn't mean that. I mean, I don't think you can look at evolution and think that wasn't guided. That's my big point.
Can we get deconverted man in here?
Get who?
A deconverted man. He's a so-called, he's supposed to be good at this evolutionary topic. I think he's in your live chat, if that's the real deconverted man. I know you probably don't get along with him, but I would have him for lunch if he came in here with the nonsense that he's spewing in the live chat. I promise you that, because I'll ask him.
I see him now.
I've debated him before. He knows to be
okay, wait, let's go back. We might do that. Let me just first go back and listen to a little bit of Matt.
Position that I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. And that means I must have in place the mechanisms that mean I'm most likely to get it right and least likely to get it wrong. It would be an interesting exercise, and maybe this is what we should do instead of a debate at a future time, for Ben and I to list 100 things we believe in, reasonably confident that the other person also believes, and that 50 of them are at least dubious. You know, maybe we don't need 100, but that might be way too much work for either one of us. But if we could list 10 things where there's 5 things that I'm really confident Ben and I both believes, and there's 5 things that I believe that I think he may not, and then look at our processes for reaching the conclusion that we are confident in those beliefs, not that not that we have knowledge, not that we are certain. I don't think you can be absolutely certain about anything, but to talk about how and why we came to believe those positions and to present the evidence for those positions where we disagree. What I find curious is that anytime I've attempted to do this,
Actually,
it's
can you
always
move that,
things
please?
like astrology.
Yeah.
Something that you guys need to know about Matt Dillahunty, he's not very good at talking about the theory of evolution. He's reading a script. My friend Chu Empiricism called into the atheist experience to call him and talk to him about intelligent design versus evolution. And Matt Dillahunty openly admitted that he does not know a whole lot about evolution. All right, which all of us immediately assumed that he's taking it on faith since he's talking about it right now. So
That's interesting.
ladies and gents, he's reading something or he's following somebody's script. The man already said on the atheist experience, when True Empiricism called the show, that he does not know much about the theory. So I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I mean, that I look at J. Warner Wallace and how he talks about a cumulative case for God. And so you and I have already discussed, now we've discussed our design, the cosmological argument. Do you want to mention the moral argument a little bit there?
Oh, yeah, definitely. As you already know, SJ, a lot of atheists will accuse other people as being will accuse other people of being immoral. They'll say, like, for example, let's just say a thief, right? They'll say another person is a killer. They'll say another person, and by the way, being a killer, they're wrong. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Being a thief is wrong no matter what. Being a liar is wrong no matter what. If that is true, then moral absolutes exist. All right. If moral absolutes exist, then there must be a moral lawgiver. If there is a moral lawgiver, then guess what? God exists because he would be that moral lawgiver. And if you look at the atheists, when they sit there and saying that lying is wrong, which me and you both agree with, stealing is wrong, we both agree with that, murder is wrong, that me and you, where are they getting that in their worldview? The only worldview I know that teaches all of those things are wrong and it's wrong objectively is the Bible. God is the one that says that those things are wrong. So they're using our worldview, or they're borrowing from our worldview in order to make their moral claims. So in my opinion, the moral argument is the strongest argument for God's existence. If moral absolutes exist, there has to be a moral lawgiver, and if there's a moral lawgiver, then God must exist.
Yeah. For example, you know what's really interesting is I pulled the World Value Survey data, the 7th wave, because it's out right now, and I can get the SPSS file. So I did. I downloaded the SPSS file, and I have it in my computer. And I distinguished people who said they were religious from those who said they were atheists. Okay, so I actually what is it called? I put all the Americans. I just decided I'd look at the U.S. So I isolated the U.S. and then I distinguished the two groups, either atheists or the religious. And it was really interesting because I found statistically significantly different differences between the atheists and the religious in there, in the morality. In atheists saying that there's much more reasons to give excuses for various immoral actions. And I thought that was really interesting.
Somebody in your live chat wants to know, how did I go from moral absolutes existing to a moral lawgiver existing? Where do morals come from, atheists? That's my question for the live chat. Where do morals come from? You certainly didn't get it from nature, considering that animals eat other animals while they're still alive, when black widow spiders eat their mates as soon as they're finished doing their thing, and all the other horrible things that we see animals doing natural things that we see animals doing. Like, nobody would never call a lion eating a gazelle while it's still alive a horrible thing or immoral. Nobody would call that. But if a human being does that to an animal, where you're literally eating them while they're still alive or whatever, they would call that inhumane. Or if you was eating another human being or doing or causing another human being to suffer while they were still alive, you know what I mean? They would say that those things are bad. So why is it bad? Where did they come from? Now, as an evolutionist, what can they tell us? Oh, we just learned this from nature. You didn't learn those things from nature, because in nature, there was nothing wrong with it.
No, it's true. It's true. Animals forcibly copulate. They steal food from each other, and nobody's going to be holding them accountable because they're animals. And so you're right. So where did this all come from? Here, if you can see this, can you see this, what I have up here?
It's small, but yes.
Okay, so it's small. If you guys can't really see it, I actually looked at the United States, New Zealand. What other countries did I look at? I looked at United States, New Zealand, and a couple of other countries, and I found the same thing in all of them. See, there's a like the first one here, justifiable, avoiding a fare on public transport. The mean for religious people is lower than the mean for atheists. The higher scores basically mean that you're more likely to think that that's justifiable. Justifiable, stealing property, cheating on taxes, someone accepting a bribe in the course of their duties. And then I just put down, I have homosexuality, prostitution, abortion, sex before marriage, euthanasia, violence against other people, death penalty, all of these things. It's really interesting because I found that the religious person in just about every case, and there's a significant difference, is not thinking these actions are justifiable. And the atheist was thinking there must be situations where they can make that justifiable. And I thought that was fascinating.
Oh, yeah. I found something too on Google. I don't have it ready right now, but I found something on Google that as far as the school shootings go, I talked about this on my GTV channel, that atheists are more likely to commit a heinous crime like the school shootings more so than another religious person. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm aware of what Islam, believes with, Sharia law and jihad and all that other stuff and whatnot. But I found it interesting that they were more likely to do it because, again, we're nothing more than a pack of complex cells. Mm-hmm. Where life doesn't have any real meaning to a lot of these atheists. So, of course, they're going to think it's okay to go in there and do something like that. And if you're making that up, actually, you can do a quick Google search and you'll see what I'm talking about.
I want to say to Nathan, he wants to know what statistical analysis did I do? I looked at a lot of things. I looked at ANOVAs, t-tests. I did a number of different things, and it's a P less than 0.05 that's significant. So P has to be 0.05 or less to be considered significant. So, okay, so here we go. Let me go ahead. We'll go back to the Dillahunty.
Man here. I haven't talked to him in years.
Who do you want to get in here?
The Converted Man. And as a matter of fact, if he doesn't want to come here, next time you come on my channel or whatever, I want to review a conversation that I had with him to show you just how frustrating I can be when I talk to him.
I will go ahead and I'm going to put the link up there, but then when I switch the screen, I won't be able to see if he comes in here. So you just tell me if you guys. Should I just open it up to anyone? Should I just put it in here?
No.
No? Okay. Okay, just Deconverted Man.
You're going to get a lot of trolls in here.
All right, so we won't open it up, but I forgot Deconverted Man. So if he wants to get in here, just have him send me an email link that I can email to him. So, okay, so let me. Oh, actually, I've got Deconverted Man on Twitter, so let me just go back to Twitter and hold on. Okay, so Deconverted Man. Let me just see. I've got him on Twitter, I believe. Let me just double check that. Converted.
Let me go to your live check.
I guess I don't have him on Twitter anymore. Okay.
Let me go to your channel real quick. Let me see.
Oh, Nathan must. Oh, you deleted Twitter, Deconverted Man. This is like.
Yeah, that's right. You got some bad seeds in your chat, and I'm gonna have to get rid of some. I could probably tell you why they're bad seeds in the. Hold on a minute. Some bad seeds in your chat. I can tell you in the private chat on why they're bad seeds. So let me do that now.
Okay. Well, let me go back. Let's go back and get the Dillahunty. Let's go back and get a little bit more of that, and then we'll come to that. Okay. So here we go. Just make sure I share the audio again. So I want to say hi to everybody in the chat. It's always good to see you guys. Mm-hmm. All right. So let's hear what Matt has to say now.
Okay. Lucky socks. Where people are saying, these things are real, despite the fact that we don't have good evidence that they are. And they would look at it and say, I read my horoscope in the newspaper. Clearly, astrology has something to it because that was really impactful for me. When they don't understand that one of the things that we need to do is get away from your personal interpretation and understanding of what your experiences are. While you are the best one to decide whether or not you're hungry right now, you may not be the best one to decide that the experience that you have is best attributed to the divine or to aliens or whatever the explanation is. That explanation needs more. And so if the evidence for God tends to be anecdotal, unverifiable, in conflict with other beliefs, that's a problem. If it's a hearsay account that doesn't give us the possibility of investigating it, when we're deciding, if you talk to a district attorney, whether or not they're deciding to bring a case, they're going to evaluate the evidence and they're going to decide whether or not they have enough evidence to make the case. And when it comes to...
And the question is, do we have enough evidence? So let's actually, Matt actually, his existence to me gives us evidence for God. And you want to hear me out on that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Matt's very existence, because if you go to Romans 1:20, which I know you know that verse really well, Romans 1:20 tells us that God doesn't force himself on us. But he also says that it's very obvious. God is made very obvious. There's a general revelation of God. We know that throughout the book, throughout the Bible, but we also just know that looking out at nature, it's obviously there's some agency, there's some direction, there's some love behind the roses and the flowers and the daisies and all the beautiful stuff that we see outside. There's love behind all of that. If you go diving, deep sea diving, and look at how it's just amazing when you go down there in the Keys and you look around at the beauty under the water. You can just see the intentionality behind God and how beautiful this world is. And Matt, the thing is Romans 1:20 tells us that even though God has made himself manifest to us in nature, even though he's done that and he is very loving, powerful, all that kind of stuff, that he doesn't force himself on atheists. So the atheist can say, no, there's no God. And then God says that he sends a powerful delusion. Okay. So somebody like Matt, his heart has been hardened. And even if you show Matt tons and tons of evidence, no matter what you do, he's not going to come around because he has already decided and God has hardened his heart. So Matt can live out his life as he wishes. And, unfortunately, that's led to some pretty crazy decisions, as we saw before. I'm not going to get into that, but he's got a past that's got some stuff in it that maybe that speaks to why he's blinded and why he's just not seeing all of the massive evidence that we have.
He's like, you know what it is? I think you called it right on my channel the last time you came on here. I think he knows that God exists. You know what I mean? He's just like playing games. I think that's what it is at this particular point. He's using denialism and he's giving people a false premise or a false methodology to try to prove that God exists to him, because he wants scientific proof. Basically, he wants you to do is have God show up. How many different times actually have we had a conversation with somebody where they said that even if God showed up or wrote something in the sky and say I exist, they say that they would be hallucinating. I actually was in a room with a guy named Boom Della Boom and a guy by the name of Alex Botton, and both of them told me that if God came down from heaven, ate a meal with them, and held a dead star in their hands, they would not believe. And nor would they follow him if they did believe in him. You understand what I'm saying? So this methodology that he's coming up with, he's controlling the narrative when he's saying that you got to use science because it's the best way to understand. No, it is not, especially when you're talking about somebody who lives outside of time and space. S.J. Thomas, let me ask you a question, because we're not talking about the atheist no more. Has God answered your prayers, yes or no?
Yes, absolutely.
How do you know he answered your prayers?
There's a lot of examples of that. Things and I don't pray for, I pray for his guidance. That's one of the things that we have to make sure of. People have either intrinsic or extrinsic religious beliefs. The intrinsic believers, and I consider myself one of those, is someone who has a very close relationship with God and realizes that God is not just somebody you pray to ask for things for you. Instead, you ask God to help you, to work with you, to guide you, to instruct you. You have to realize that sometimes things are going to go pretty badly in life. And sometimes they'll go really well for you. And it's just one of those things that you have to realize it's in God's hands. And so
you have a personal testimony that God answered your prayers. I have a personal testimony that God answered my prayers. 90% of the world has a testimony that God has answered their prayers. Only a very minute, tiny grain of sand, a group of people on the planet are walking around here saying that God doesn't answer their prayers. So they're already outnumbered with this. We have a whole bunch of people out there that is saying that God is interacting in our lives and that he is showing us things. Even the most hateful Muslim towards Christians are going to say, that he believes his idea of God actually manifested himself to him or whatever in some way or another. Now, for an atheist to come to you and say that God never did none of that for you, they have to actually be able to provide evidence for that. And none of them has been able to do that. Deconverted Man said in the live chat, outside of time and space. As a matter of fact, let me find it. I don't know if you saw it or not.
No, I didn't.
Okay. He said, here it goes. Outside of time and space, nowhere and no when. SJ, one of the arguments, and this is why I wanted him to come in this room, because it's easy for them to talk in chat. It's another thing to talk in person. They believe in something called proton particles, right? Where apparently nothing is responsible for creating the singularity and getting the bang started, right? They believe that these proton particles were coming in and out of existence. And then they themselves would try to argue that there's a multiverse, that there's a universe behind this universe, and there's probably one behind that one.
With no evidence.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So they're doing that on faith.
Oh yeah, they have no evidence for it whatsoever, absolutely none. But they'll make this argumentation to try to get away from the idea of God living outside of time and space. You know what I mean? But that's our positive claim. They take our positive claim and try to make it try to sound like we're arguing that he's actually bound to the laws of nature. You know what I mean? And he's not. That's not our claim. That is the claim that the atheists are making when they're trying to get us to use science to prove that God exists. So again, if anybody says I'm wrong and think they can prove otherwise, ask S.J. Thomas for the link. Don't sing it, bring it.
I see deconverted man says it's so funny. Okay.
I notice that, Shay. They'll constantly talk in this chat.
He wants to come in here. Let me go. Sit.
They're all trained. They all know not to mess with me.
Well, I also want to say the other evidence that we have before deconverted man comes in here, the other evidence we have is Jesus Christ. And you guys just do your due diligence, do the homework, look at what the apostles said, look at how they lived their lives, look at why they were willing to go to their deaths. And they, again, they were being pursued the whole time. Paul, if you consider just the story of Paul alone, that's enough. And the fact that the Jewish people of his time, 40 of them took a pledge that they were going to starve themselves until they killed him. And Paul just kept doing what he did. They can't explain that. So if you guys just please go look at that and make that decision yourself.
I want them to explain to me Peter's life, how Peter was a coward when Jesus was going to be crucified and when they flogged him. I want them to explain what it means to be flogged. And then I want them to explain the agony that a person goes through when they're crucified. Then I want them to explain the persecution that the Jews experienced from the Romans and from the religious leaders of their day and why Peter hid. And then I want them to explain why is it after the resurrection and after Jesus ascended to the Father that all of a sudden Peter grew, became He-Man and decided that he wanted to take on the whole world and preach the gospel and whatnot. I want them to explain that. No atheist ever has, and I doubt anybody can actually do that. They can't explain the voice of the martyrs, all of the different Christians that were either boiled in oil, burned alive inside of houses or churches in their particular day, people who were crucified right side up and crucified upside down. They won't be able to talk about all the Christians that were fed to lions. They won't be able to talk about, and all they had to do was recant. All they had to do is say, we don't need to no more. That's all they had to say, but they didn't do it. Can you imagine a lion biting into you?
Well, some did. Some did.
I don't believe no more, and the persecution stops.
No, I can't. No, I can say some. I'm sure some probably did recant because we have that letter from Pliny the Younger to Emperor Trajan. But the ones like Peter and Paul, who had these firsthand experiences, they went to their deaths after preaching for him for decades, despite massive persecution.
Exactly. They can't see. Here's the thing: how does Christianity keep growing despite how many Christians are dying? Think about the majority of all the Christians that were dying, and the more they died, the more they suffered, the more Christianity grew in that part of the world. They don't want to deal with that because all they want to do is sit back and say, well, that's not empirical evidence. Eyewitness testimony is not good, is not reliable evidence, and that's not true either. You know what I mean? If we allow the atheists to control the narrative and tell us what is required for evidence, they're going to create something so ridiculous that nobody's going to be able to show them anything. That's why we have to bring them back to the Bible. It is that we're going to please God and it's going to be done by faith. And we have to demonstrate him by faith. I wasn't around when Jesus walked the earth. I wasn't around when Paul was here. I wasn't around when Peter was here. In the same way that none of these atheists were around when the dinosaurs walked in the earth, when their macroevolution took place, they wasn't around for any of that. So I have a faith-based position. They have a faith-based position. They understand this. They're just dishonest about it, I think. Yeah,
well, I want to point out something really important that I think kind of touches on what you're saying. You talked a little, and I'm going to let Deconverted Man in here in just a second. You talked a little bit about the very earliest Christians. Now, let's not forget something. The Christians had no legal protections up until 313 when Constantine finally legalized Christianity. But prior to that point, between 5 and 6 million people were following Christianity, according to Jeffrey Wawrow, who's a secular historian, and 40 other authors globally, university professors. So between 5 and 6 million people were worshiping prior to even having legal status. Many of them sporadically were being killed throughout those centuries. And as Gamaliel said to the other Pharisees when they had captured Peter and another apostle, he said, if this is of God, you won't be able to stop them. Okay, that's in Acts 5. You won't be able to stop them. And he pointed out a couple of other movements from the early times. And he pointed out the fact that those movements failed to gain followers after the leader died. And of course, Christianity did keep going after the leader died and resurrected. And so the other thing is, just so everybody knows in the audience, you guys just go yourselves to Sanhedrin. Okay, look at 98 and 97 Sanhedrin. The Jews wrote this a few hundred years after Jesus, but they realized that at the time when Jesus was to arrive, they knew that there was, at that time, that was the end of the 2,000-year cycle. They knew that he was due. They knew the anointed one was due at that time because the book of Daniel predicted that Jesus would come when he did. And so if you guys just look at the prophecies, you look at all that kind of stuff, you're going to be absolutely overcome with all of this evidence.
Actually, how do we know that Jesus existed from the secular sources that we have?
You don't.
So yeah, we've got 9 secular sources within 150 years.
No, you don't.
So
that's not deconverted man, I don't think.
that is deconverted man.
Deconverted man, show your face. That's not deconverted man.
That's deconverted man.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
Do you guys know each other? Was there a different deconverted man maybe you talked to?
That's not deconverted man. That's somebody else.
Okay, well, this guy definitely calls by deconverted man. He's Dan.
Deconverted man.
I can show you who deconverted man is, and that's not him.
Oh, well, there must be 2 deconverted men.
How about that?
Men,
Does that
2
work for you?
No, you're not deconverted man. I'm thinking about something different. You're not.
Okay. That's all right.
So are you an atheist?
I'm a skeptic.
I didn't ask you if you were a skeptic. I'm a skeptic too. Are you an atheist?
No, you're not a skeptic.
Yes, I am. I'm very skeptical of Islam.
Are you skeptical of God? Are you skeptical of God? No, then you're not a skeptic.
I'm skeptical of a lot of different things. I don't have to be skeptical of just God in order to be a skeptic.
But I am. So, anyways, man, I don't even know where to start. I was going to start with the moral thing, I guess.
Yeah, why don't you start with that? Maybe you can educate me on morality.
I'm going to,
remember, you're talking to 2 Christians that believes in absolutes.
Yeah,
absolutes, and you claim you don't. Try to remember that.
I don't. What other claims have I made so far? Because I haven't made.
You're going to talk about morality as an atheist, and I would like to hear it.
As well, from a skeptical atheist, agnostic, whatever my label is, perspective, I suppose.
So you don't know if you're an atheist, and you don't know if you're an agnostic?
I'm all of the things.
Oh, so you're an atheist and you're an agnostic. Can you explain what the difference between an atheist and an agnostic is? And
ichtheist. No, I'm not going to do that because it's not relevant for the topic.
It's not relevant for you to tell me the difference between an atheist and an atheist or an agnostic.
Okay, so we're going to talk about morality a little bit, so I can attempt to respond to some. I want to make sure you
remember that later on, SJ, that he says there's no difference between an atheist, and agnostic.
I didn't say that.
You just said that whatever your label is. We don't know what your label is.
It doesn't matter what my label is.
Okay. You're an atheist. Until you
fine.
say what you actually are. You're an atheist.
Interesting assertion. So there we have a problem already of how this person wants to conduct himself. He doesn't want the other person to put on the table what they think. He wants to assert what they think. I haven't made any claims yet, except that I'm a skeptic. That's the only claim I made. Well, then I claimed that G-Man isn't a skeptic because he has a belief in God. That's another claim I made. But other than that, he wants to saddle me with some claims. That's fine.
First John chapter 4.
I don't care. I don't care.
Hold on.
We should. Well, listen. Here's what we're gonna do.
I don't care. Don't mention the Bible to me. I don't care about the Bible. The Bible is written by humans for humans. You guys had your hour-long thing, and you can keep doing that amongst yourselves and getting nowhere, or you can listen to the other side for a change. Here's the thing.
Listen, deconverted man, I just want to say something really quickly. So I initially have G-Man on here for today, so I'll give you like probably about five minutes to explain
5 minutes to explain to you all the things. Okay, well, humans and morality, we evolved, even though G-Man doesn't like that we evolved with the morals together. Morals evolved with society. as society and brains became more complex, I know it's difficult because, some people's brains aren't very complex, but as the species became more complex, the way that we treated each other became more complex. At first, we were in tribes. Then we figured out how to plant grass and have farms. And then the society became a thing, and we had to have more complex structures to that. So we developed different ideas that would keep that society functioning. Some worked and some did not. Some thought that if you sacrificed other humans, that would appease the rain and the gods, or whatever they might have called them at the time. They might have not been called gods at the time, but they thought they would get better rain or better sun for the crops. So they killed people. That society didn't work, and so that society failed and died away. The societies that did work with other morals succeeded. And so you have, over time, death of ideas that didn't work because the society would fail, and succeeding morality, which then would carry on to the next generation, and so on and so forth. So it's just like evolution, you have morals that evolve over time. That's where it came from. It came from essentially humans. And before you make any objections, we also made chess. We all can agree on how to play chess. So just because we make rules, that doesn't mean that we can also ignore the rules that we make. And since I only have 5 minutes, thanks for your time. Have fun talking to each other. This is actually God. Woo, prove me wrong, G-Man. Oh, by the way, Chocolate Atheist. I'm still waiting for the apology for that lie. But anyways.
Okay, so, well, I want to address what you said. I think actually one of the biggest, one of the ways to actually falsify your argument is to look at the 20th century and to notice that 120 million people perished under communist beliefs, and another 6 million people were slaughtered in Nazi times.
And did they survive? Did that society survive?
Yeah, China's still here, isn't it?
Yeah.
China's still here.
Yep.
So is Cambodia. So is Russia.
So is Russia, yeah.
It's USSR, but it's still functioning right now.
Religion seems to be thriving over there right now.
Interesting. Interesting that religion's still doing strong in these places where bad things still happen. That's very interesting. Okay, goodbye, guys. Have fun talking to each other.
Okay, bye.
Okay, so this is what I learned from him. I learned that he's full of assertions and no proof whatsoever. So basically saying that we all evolved with our morals.
Well, see, we did to an extent. He's right to an extent. Like here's the thing. We have this thing where we're discovering, like we're slowly discovering exactly how we should be and what the moral standard is. And people are trying to get closer and closer. And we can certainly say that the societies are way better off since Christianity came about. We saw that with Tom Holland in his book, Dominion. He traced the way that people used to be treating each other back in the ancient times, and he looked till today. And we certainly can say that that's better. But of course, there are also there's things that disprove the fact that humans have done a very good job, even in this past century, is all I'm trying to say. But Christianity has led to this whole idea that individuals have dignity and value, all individuals, and we have equal opportunity. We expect to have equal opportunity and to be equally weighed in with the law.
Okay, so he said that when we evolve with morals and whatnot, right? Are there moral absolutes, yes or no?
Yeah.
Or the converted man? I
think he would. I'm not sure if he would say there's moral absolutes.
I'm pretty sure he would say that there's moral absolutes, because if morality is subjective, then we didn't evolve with nothing.
Yeah.
So if we evolve with the morals, then it has to be objective. Now the question is, did we evolve with them religiously, or did we evolve from them through the natural course of evolution, in which now he has the burden of proof to be able to prove that that's actually how it happened?
Yeah. If somebody in the chat, like I'm Tyrone, says there's no such thing as absolutes, that's ridiculous. I mean, is there ever a time when rape is correct? You're violating somebody.
I guarantee you that Tyrone believes that racism is absolutely wrong. I can show you a video to prove that one. That's
you know him?
Oh yeah, he's a troll. That's what the heck he is. And when I see a troll, he's saying things to try to get people upset while he's in the chat. But I can show you a video right now where he's responding to somebody, if that's Tyrone. I highly doubt he is. But he's making a video being very angry about somebody making racial claims. As a matter of fact, all of the people that are atheists that know what I'm talking about in the live chat will say that it is objectively wrong to be a racist. I got video after video after video after video after video to prove that. I believe that it is objectively wrong to be a racist. You want to know why? Because God says that racism is wrong. Why do they believe racism? They believe that racism is wrong for the same reasons. Because God says it. Because they're borrowing from the Christian worldview in order to make an argument for morality, not nature.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can't say that. Again, you were just saying when we have these moral codes, we've come to discover them. And Jesus came down and made it clear to us that we're supposed to love our neighbors as ourselves and love the Lord above all else. And he made a lot of things clear to us. So should we go back to the Dillahunty video?
Yeah, let's go back to that. Yes.
Okay. Here we go. All right. So just double checking here. Dillahunty. Ben Fisher. Now, I didn't know Ben Fisher before. Have you seen this guy before?
The guy that Matt Dillahunty's debating? No.
Yeah, no, I wasn't familiar with him. So I do know that Matt Dillahunty gets paid to do these things, by the way. He commands a salary for doing this sort of thing, or a stipend. I shouldn't say a salary. I should say a stipend. What's that? I
got on camera and I offered the man, when he was unemployed, I offered him $2,000 to debate me on the topic of slavery.
Are you serious?
Oh, no.
Really?
Yeah.
He won't debate you?
Yep. I got $2,000 in my pocket right now. I'll still offer him the same money to debate me on slavery. And you know
that is a lot of money.
He's going to tell me no.
That's crazy.
I wonder why, though.
That is, you know, that's interesting. Okay, here we go.
Something like God. Not only do I not think there's enough evidence to convict, I don't think there's enough evidence to even bring the case. What we have are testimonial accounts. I fully acknowledge there's anecdotal evidence in the
Let's stop there a minute. This is important. He says that there's not enough evidence to even have a discussion about this, right? Mm-hmm. And he says what we have is testimonials. Actually, you're a college professor. Can you briefly let the audience know what a testimony is?
Yeah, testimony is a testament to the truth, to something that you experienced. You're bound to, like if you get into court and you have to make a testimony, you're bound to the law to be telling the truth. Right.
Let me tell you something. I've never seen a singularity get so hot that it expands and create a universe. You know what I'm listening to? I'm listening to a scientist give me their idea about how the universe got started. I've never seen it. I never witnessed it. Mm-hmm. I've listened to their scientific explanations, and I will give it credence and I will give it credit for what I'm listening to. But it's still on faith. So when you try to sit there and downplay testimonies, now I don't have to listen to any scientist unless I actually am there myself to actually see the experiments that's going on. He's being intellectually dishonest right now.
You know, one of the things I think that we can also, if you have an experience of something where somehow you know the future or something like that, one of the things that I think is so powerful is in the Bible, 330 prophecies were fulfilled by Jesus, which is really incredible. So if you guys are doubting, go to Isaiah 53, Psalm 22, Zechariah 12:10, Daniel 9. We even knew when Jesus was going to arrive. Okay, it's going to be 77s less 7 after the decree went out to Artaxerxes. Okay, 444 BC. We've got a lot of these. We've got so much evidence right there. And so to deny that, and the thing is with Matt, he knows this stuff. He's not like the average atheist that you might meet on the street who really hasn't even done the homework. Matt knows this. So he has the evidence. So he's either deliberately suppressing it or he's just in denial, like you said.
That's what he's doing. He's deliberately suppressing it. Remember when he had that conversation with that kid, and the kid was talking about the secular sources for the existence of Jesus. They want to make believe and pretend like those things don't exist. Later on today, I'm going to be having a discussion with a guy by the name of Potated Atheist, and I do plan on bringing those things up because they keep saying that no one's ever provided a drop of evidence for God's existence. That's a lie. That's a straight up lie, and they know it.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much evidence out there. Just again, outside, just like I showed you in the book. Okay, if you guys are just joining and you haven't seen Hugh Ross's book and you haven't looked at that yet, take a look at how the last 10,000 years, how not volatile the climate has been, how that actually helped human civilizations to come about. So God has been planning for us to be here for a very long time. He planned for Jesus to arrive. People will find this interesting. They say, okay, the earth is about 4.5 billion years old. Now, people can argue if they're young Earth creationists or whatever, but we know the Earth is old. Okay, or if you don't want to say, if you say 6,000 years, whatever, but if we say the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, think about this. 57% of the population, according to the Population Reference Bureau, has been in existence after Jesus. Okay. So we've only got in the last couple thousand years, 57% of the people who've walked the planet have walked the planet. If we go out another 1,000 years, we're probably looking at a much higher percentage because we're booming right now. And so as far as the size of we only had about a billion people on the planet in 1800. Right now, we've got almost 8 billion, and that number is going to keep going up. And so we're going to see, we might even get to a point where maybe 99.9% of the population will have lived after Jesus.
You want to know something else about science that really irritates me when we're talking about when they're talking about evolution? You notice how they always say that when they get new information, that their minds would change as they gather new information, right? That means all of the information, I think I heard you talk about this and some other people. That means all of the information that they had prior to getting this new information was wrong. And they was actually believing wrong information about their theory. Mm-hmm. So let's say 20 years ago, they said this about mutations and about evolution. And they was defending it and fighting it, saying that this was true. And then new information comes about that shows that information was wrong and it happened a different way. Then that means for 20 years, they was teaching our children wrong information about something that happened in science or whatever. So when Matt Dillahunty says that this is a good method in order to determine if something is real, if it exists, or anything like that, he's using a flawed system. He's using a system that actually could be wrong because new information could come out tomorrow to show him that he's wrong. And then he's allowed to constantly discontinue what he's listening to until this new information comes along. It's ridiculous.
No, it's like going back to the 1800s and going back to, say, Germany and places like that, where a lot of these movements against God were coming about with people like Nietzsche. You've got a time when people thought that the universe could have been eternal. Okay, and then suddenly in 1925, we have Lemaitre comes out with a theory of the Big Bang, and people like Albert Einstein deliberately created a fudge factor because he was trying to figure out how to get away from the Big Bang because he knew the theological implications of it, if there was a starting point. And that gives us evidence that only the Bible says, in the beginning, God made the heavens and the earth. And that's, you know, if you go to the Hindu faith, people actually believe that we're in this constant state of recycling. And that's not what the Bible says, and that's not what the science says. So, did I lose you, G-Man? I see you, G-Man. Are you there still? Wait, I can't hear you.
Okay, I was
you got bumped off. Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay. So I was like, where'd G-Man go? Okay. So yeah. So I mean, that's the thing. We've got lots and lots of evidence. So should we go back? Go back to, I think I'm still screen sharing.
Well, actually, there's one more thing that we need to talk about too before the show is over. We need to talk about the origin of life. Actually, I don't know if you know this or not, but there's absolutely no scientific evidence for abiogenesis whatsoever. And that is this idea that life came from non-life, or that life came out of this primordial soup. They'll talk about it till they're blue in the face. But when we start talking about, the details about what supposedly happened on that day, the Miller experiment that did not prove that it actually happened. It actually proved that their theory is a failure, which is why none of them wants to debate abiogenesis no more. It actually demonstrates that life had to come from life and not from non-life. Mm-hmm. So we can talk about that as we go on.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of the guy. I want to say it's James Tour, but he's a chemist, a biochemist, and he actually talks a lot about this, about how they're actually trying to be desperate to try to come up with being able to reinvent that whole system themselves. And he said he used the metaphor of a Corvette. He said all they do is they go and they buy all the stuff that they would need to put together these cells and do all this kind of stuff to try to reconstruct life. And he said it's like a Corvette. They actually go get the Corvette, take the engine out, put back a crappier engine, and try to pretend like they actually has had some sort of starting of life, and it doesn't work.
One more thing too regarding the theory of evolution. I want to make sure I look at the comments when I say this. A lot of the atheists in the live chat will pretend like thousands, and I mean thousands of scientists are not being skeptical about the theory of evolution. They're all signing this document. I think they're up to like maybe 2,000 people now, where they're all being skeptical about the theory of evolution, saying that the information that is being taught regarding the theory is actually false. You can actually type it in. It's called the off the top of my head, I can't remember it. But if you go on YouTube, you'll see this this letter or this list. If you go on Google, and about 2,000 people, I think, signed the document so far. I think it's more than that, actually, where they're being skeptical about the theory of evolution. These are people who are biologists, chemists, in various different forms, in various different degrees of science or whatever. But they want to act as if that doesn't exist.
Well, they came out in 2016 at the Royal Society in England, and they said that they need a better theory. They need to have something that better explains what they're finding. And so I mean, I have to admit, I don't know that much about that field. That's not my specialization at all. So that's something I don't really talk about as much. But I can say that one thing that I noticed with people like Richard Dawkins is he realized that there's a problem with the very beginning of the origins of the species. He realizes that there's an issue. And so he said, maybe this life came over from another planet. And so that's what they have absolutely zero evidence for that. So it's a faith-based position.
Exactly. Atheists have all kinds of faith-based positions. Actually, being an atheist is a faith-based position. So, they have no evidence for any proof that there's no God. They'll say it's a switch on the burden of proof, but the reality is none of them's got a solid argument for being an atheist. None of them. But anyway, let's get back to the conversation between the debate between Matt and this is John here, Fisher.
Okay, perfect. So here we go.
From believers, and I'm a former believer. I used to have a Jesus hat I could put on here around a little bit to swap back and forth and put on my old hat. I used to believe those things. And when I stopped believing, it wasn't because I got mad at God. It wasn't because I decided, I want to go sin. It wasn't for any reason other than I don't see an evidence-based, valid argument for the existence of God. And as I
want to say something. What I noticed about a lot of atheists on Twitter is when I put out this poll, I actually did a poll and I found out if a person's either a believer or a non-believer, and if they were a believer in polyamory or if they weren't. Polyamorous people are the ones who think that they can trade out wives and do things like that. So they don't believe that they have to be loyal to just one woman in a marriage or one man in a marriage. And so I found that the atheists, it's significantly more atheists said they thought with polyamory is perfectly acceptable. And so I think and that's something that obviously God doesn't believe in. God does not acknowledge that. Jesus acknowledges a one man, one woman kind of a marriage. And so I think that desire to be polyamorous and to go against the God probably drives a lot of these atheists. Well, shoot, did I lose you again, G-Man? I did.
Yeah, I was trying to tell you on the phone. You should keep your phone near you so you can see when I'm texting you.
Okay. Oh yeah, now I do have my phone near me, but it was kind of off, so I got you.
Yeah.
Did you hear what I said about polyamory?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm thinking. So I think that particular thing, because like Richard, I'm not going to name all these atheists, but actually I will name a few of them because they've gone public talking about how being polyamorous is such a good thing. And so Richard Dawkins, he's a polyamorist. Richard Carrier is another one.
Richard Dawkins also supports pedophilia too. Well, soft pedophilia, according to him.
Yeah,
he won't condemn it. Matt Dillahunty believes in wife. Actually, I don't know if I can say that on your channel or not, but I'll put it this way. Matt Dillahunty does not believe in the institution of marriage the way the traditional person does. I'll put it to you that way.
Yeah, no, actually that was well explained by David Silverman on Steve McRae's channel. So if you guys are interested in that little chat, go over there and check that out. So
how much does she cost though? Does he rent her out or does he just lend them out or whatever? Or like his wife doesn't have any real standards or anything like that. That's not good. I think it's like a demeaning, demoralizing sort of a belief system. I would hate that if my husband thought he wanted to do that. I can't even imagine. I would actually have to get divorced. I wouldn't be able to deal with that. No, walk right out of the house and say, you want me to do what? It must be crazy.
Yeah, it's just like terrible. Okay, here we go.
Looked around and asked, nobody could give me one. And as I run around doing more and more debates with people, it has yet to materialize. And today, and again, no offense to Ben, we're going to have a conversation and hopefully we get to it, but there was not even an attempt. I mean, granted, I don't view debates as winning. Like somebody was like, oh, did you win the debate? I don't know. I don't care. If you're looking at debates as who won, I think you have kind of the wrong
lying.
You want to actually have.
What is he?
He's lying. Oh, I don't view debates as winning. If Matt Dillahunty doesn't view debates as actually winning, me and you both should have been debating him by now. Like, he's lying right now. He doesn't want to be humiliated. He doesn't want to lose his audience. If I debate him on slavery, and that's what's going to happen, he's going to lose his audience. And if you debate him on whether or not God exists in a fair format where he can't hang the phone up on you and constantly keep muting you, he's a dead man, and he knows it. You know?
Yeah. Well, his one of these times, G-Man, it would be kind of funny for you and I to call. It's like,
we should call them together.
That
Like,
would be-
Matt, this is SJ and G-Man, and we want to debate you. Stop running. We don't know.
You're gonna be like, you can run, but you can't hide.
It can be like, we're going to save your atheist experience one day. So why don't you go on my channel, and maybe I'll start telling people to watch you again.
So funny. Okay, here we go. Let's see what else he's again saying he doesn't have the evidence. It was really funny when Mike Licona debated him. Mike actually asked him, he said something like, if God had written up in the sky, in the stars, this is God and I love you, or something like that. Matt's like, well, I would think I was seeing things. I mean, there's nothing that God could do to prove his existence as far as Matt is concerned.
Exactly, especially if you're using denialism. He's denying reality. So even if God comes down from heaven and holds a dead star in his hands, or a supernova in his hands, or does some type of miracle. Think about this, actually. When Jesus was here and he walked on water and he healed all of those people and he rose, people still don't believe in him. People still don't follow him. Even when he walked the earth, went to the bathroom like everybody else did, people still didn't believe. You know what I mean? So again, when this man sits here and says, if you give me evidence, I'm going to believe, after he said that, if you show me evidence, and even if he does exist, I'm not going to worship him, we have to appeal to the scriptures. He's suppressing the truth and unrighteousness, and the only way that man's going to get saved is if you preach the truth and love to him. That's about it.
That's the thing about Jesus that I think people don't even appreciate. A lot of times people like to talk about what they don't like about the Old Testament, and they try to make God out as if he's some sort of moral monster and all this kind of stuff. But it's almost like they deliberately ignore, in fact, they do deliberately ignore what Jesus did for them, what Jesus did for all of us, and how at the very end, when the bulls of Bashan, these people were, dividing up his clothes and mocking him and doing all kinds of things like that. What does he do? He says, Father, please forgive them, for they know not what they do. I mean, that is amazing.
Exactly. Something that a lot of atheists don't want to try to understand. Forgiveness is a very powerful way to be able to communicate to people and to show people that you care. One of the things that I said on my other channel, actually, as I said, that people are more likely to listen to somebody who cares than they are somebody who doesn't care. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Typically, if you're a jerk, if you're a person who teases people all the time, no one's going to listen to what you got to say. But if you come across as being loving, caring, forgiving, being compassionate, people are going to listen to what you have to say then. And a lot of these atheists haven't learned that, or they missed the evolution bus, like the Converted Man and some of these other people that are watching.
The evolution bus. Yeah. So here, I think Converted Man might have left us. He didn't like to be listening to two Christians, but that's all right. We've got an atheist here anyway, represented with Matt Dillahunty, don't we?
Yes, we do. He's in the room with us, whether you like it or not.
The conversation. Do I think I've won a debate? Sure. Under whatever criteria somebody might have. Do I think I've lost? Sure. But the important thing is, if we're going to have a debate, if this was a collegiate score debate, it would already be over, because Ben didn't present positive evidence or even an argument for the actual proposition. And I don't care. And I don't want anybody in chat to go like, oh, Ben didn't show up with it. That's irrelevant. Ben,
yeah.
Okay, Matt Dillahunty does not get to say that no one's ever provided any evidence. This is what I recommend people do if you debate Baldilocks over there. I'm sorry, I got to be like this, actually. I'm sorry. When you're debating Matt Dillahunty, please make him define what evidence is, and not just his biased scientific definition. Mm-hmm. Make him break it down what evidence is. Give him tiny examples about, how do I prove to you I'm holding a book of matches? What would the criteria of evidence be? Putting it in front of a camera? What kind of a description would I have to give you to prove that I have that a book of matches actually exists? You know what I mean? And then when you do that, in the beginning of your conversation or debate, he can't go back on it. So when you follow his rules and you show him evidence, whether it be good evidence or bad evidence, the point is you showed him evidence and he has to acknowledge it. And he keeps saying he doesn't care and he doesn't care. All that is his mind is made. Actually, talked about this earlier. His mind is made up. Nothing you're going to show him is going to constitute as evidence for the existence of God, because a man has an agenda.
Well, see what he does. What he's done in a lot of debates is he turns the debate. He flips it so the debate's all about convincing Matt. And so, I mean, I actually offered to debate him to James a while ago, but then nothing ever happened. But I would have debated him on the resurrection and whether we have enough evidence to support Jesus's resurrection and Christianity itself. Because I think we have really a lot evidence.
It's amazing. Can you do me a favor, Ashley? Do me a favor. Minimize this Matt Dillahunty thing. Get that digital gnosis comment and put that on the front of your screen here for me.
Okay.
It says because these cannot provide scientific evidence.
Wait, this one?
So that's off the table. Could you do me a favor and click on that? Okay. Here's the thing, digital gnosis. Did you know that scientifically speaking, Christians already did that, and you guys make believe like we haven't? I'll give you an example. In the book of Genesis, what it says. It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and the earth was void. I'm sorry, and the earth was actually, can you do me a favor? I can't think right now. Could you read Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 and 2 for me, please?
Sure. All right, let me get that out.
What do you got for me? Off the top of my head, I can't get it out properly, but
in the beginning,
Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 and 2.
Okay, so I'll get the preface here. Here we go. Okay, the word Genesis means, forget that. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Okay, and God said, let there be light, and there was light.
Stop there. For the atheist that is watching this digital gnosis, what do you call what happened with the singularity expanding? What is that called? I know it's fusion, but it's another word that goes to it. What is it called, digital gnosis? Because this has already been presented in the laboratory, not in the laboratory, but by scientists over and over and over again. What is that called? Where when the singularity began to expand and it began to cool. I think it's called thermal fusion, if I'm not mistaken. Now, don't hold me to the technical term, but it's called thermal fusion, right? Now, if God said, let there be light, and thermal fusion is actually this singularity just expanding, okay, and then darkening like the Big Bang said actually happened, then that is precisely what happened in the book of Genesis. All this nonsense about no one's been able to show any scientific evidence for God is ridiculous. Let's talk about intelligent design, right? You guys, for example, say, and I'm talking to the evolutionists out there, you guys constantly sit there and say that you're related, that you share a common ancestor with an orangutan, with a deer, with a strawberry, and with an orange. This is what the evolutionists believe, that we share a common ancestor of all life forms. Intelligent design says that we have a common creator who made us out of the same stuff, and that we can use science to back this up. The same way, if you found a watch on the ground, I use the Watchmaker Argument, where if you found a watch on the ground and you see that the watch has a certain mechanics about it and it functions a certain way, no one comes to the conclusion that this watch formed itself. We know that it must have had a designer. In the same way that we can look at a car and come to this conclusion, we can come to the conclusion. And by the way, if I gave you 500 trillion chances and I gave you chemicals and told you to randomly throw it out there, you're not going to get a living cell. All right. It doesn't make a difference how many chances I give you. You're not going to be able to get that. The only way something like that could have happened if an intelligent guided it. The milliurine experiment did accomplish something. It demonstrated that you needed an intelligence to actually have the atmosphere be a certain way, have a certain amount of chemicals a certain way, and have things be a certain way in order for a living cell to come about and have that cell survive. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when you make the blanket statement and you say things like, well, no one's been able to prove it scientifically, that's just ridiculous. All right.
Well,
that's
actually
more ridiculous than you actually than any argument that me and SJ has made the entire time we've been in this room. SJ, let me ask you this, SJ. Let me ask you this. Actually, you probably won't be able to answer it because it's not your area of expertise. But let me ask you this anyway. Can a living cell survive ammonia? Survive being in ammonia?
In ammonia?
Yes.
I think that would probably kill it.
Exactly. But that's what actually existed during the days of abiogenesis, where the cell came about in this complex soup, and ammonia existed in the soup, and it was an oxygenless environment. That means there was very, 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 very little to nothing in oxygen actually existing during this time. How did the cell survive? Zero atheists Zero of these atheists can actually explain how that cell actually survived. So when they say things like that no one's ever provided any scientific evidence for the existence of God, that's ridiculous. And then, like I said, this is a cosmological argument that you talked about earlier. You know what I mean? They don't know what they're talking about.
Well, I want to point out something that I just read. So I just read Genesis. And so what you guys can see is when they have gone back and looked at what the initial conditions were on the earth, guess what? It was covered in water. And so Genesis actually told us that, that the earth was covered with water. Right. Wow. Isn't that a coincidence? And actually, if you go to Hugh Ross's books, he's written a whole bunch of books on Genesis. And he's as you know, he's a cosmologist. He studies the heavens. He studies that kind of stuff. And he's said that Genesis and the rest of the Bible are extremely consistent with what science shows.
Exactly.
So, and I love that. So, okay. So should we go back to the Dillahunty thing?
Yes. And I want to remind the audience that I have my control here. Watch it. Anyway, go ahead, Ashley.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You guys be polite too. I think I saw somebody say a couple things in the chat here that aren't cool. Okay, here we go. So again, he's going to turn this into convince Matt time.
Something.
Okay.
And we're having a conversation for the rest of this time, along with questions, about why he believes and why he thinks I should believe. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe Ben does not. I don't want to make any assumptions. Maybe he does not believe that I should be convinced for the reasons that he is.
See, I don't think that we need to care if Matt believes or not. I mean, I mean, it would be ideal if Matt cares, but if we are giving Matt, just like God says, you know, he's going to let you walk away if you want to. And Matt clearly wants to.
Exactly. It's not our job to convince Matt. Like, again, he's controlling the narrative. So he's trying to make it sound like it's our job to convince him. It's not my job to convince you of reality. You know, you're going to be in reality whether you like it or not. God's going to judge you whether you like it or not. So you don't want to believe in your business.
Yeah. Okay.
But all I can do when somebody thinks they have good evidence is to say, show me the good evidence. Let's have a conversation about the good evidence. And I will tell you why I think it is good evidence, or perhaps why I think
he's lying. And this is why he's lying.
Maybe that
there is no good evidence whatsoever that he's related to a watermelon, yet this is what he believes. There is no good, as a matter of fact, Ashley, me and you both believe that there's no such thing as races, right? There's only one race, and that is the human race, right? We believe that it all started from Adam and Eve. Evolution teaches that you have the black race, you got the white race, you got the Asian race, you got the Indian race. You know what I mean? When they categorize everybody. And actually, SJ, you want to see something interesting? Evolution also teaches that there were people who are more evolved than the other person. All you gotta do is read The Origin of Species, okay, in its entirety. Read the entire title; it'll tell you that, and then go read The Descent of Man, where they claim that the civilized races are going to get rid of this, are eventually going to be able to get rid of the savage races. That would be anyone that is not Caucasian. All right. So he continually sits there and says that he will believe things if he had good evidence. Yet I've never seen Matt Dillahunty once provide a drop of evidence, except for say, oh, talk to Lawrence Krauss, talk to Thunderfoot. I've never seen him actually provide any real evidence that you and I or him is related to a watermelon or a peach or a plum or anything like that.
Well, I'd like to see him give us evidence that, you know, that God doesn't exist, because I don't think there is evidence that's convincing to me that God doesn't exist. So I mean, if you look out into nature, if you look at the beauty in the world, if you look at the fact that we have an objective moral standard against which we judge all of our actions, if you look at what Jesus did in his bringing on of human dignity, we've got a ton of evidence in support of God. And so to try to claim we don't is just being blind to the evidence that's surrounding us. Exactly. So, I mean, think about this morality. People in the chat, if you wonder, how come when you say this is wrong, that's even people like Richard Dawkins, I can go down to his Twitter account, look at what he says. A lot of times he'll be calling out something that he feels is wrong. And I think to myself, is that within your cultural context that this is wrong? Or can you go and claim that something in another culture is wrong when you have this relativist belief? And so.
Let me ask you this, SJ. Why is rape wrong to an atheist?
Yeah. So if they're a relativist, they don't have. If they're relativists, they can't say it's wrong. If it happens in another culture that's not theirs and it's acceptable in that other culture, they have no claim against it. That's the big problem. That's the rub.
Country B says rape is okay. Country A says that it's not. Who's right and who's wrong to a subjectivist?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, there's this place called the British Pitcairn Islands, okay? And in these islands, it's perfectly fine for males to routinely what they call break in their 10-year-old daughters. For males to go routinely break in 10-year-old, I don't mean daughters, I mean 10-year-olds, not daughters, but it's fine for them. That's meaning forced sex on them. Okay, it's acceptable there. Now, can I say that's wrong? Absolutely, because I have an objective system that all humans are bound to. But can a relativist like Richard Dawkins? No, he can't say that, and neither can Max. I think Matt's a relativist too. Exactly.
And most of the people that make these arguments about biology and making these arguments about evolution don't even understand the theory themselves. Again, for the people that are in the live chat, I'm still waiting for you guys to show me those new anatomical features for mutations. And most of you watch the GTV channel. So don't come over here pretending like I haven't presented that to you guys and you guys haven't ran in the other direction when I asked you that question. Okay? Show me the new anatomical features you get for random mutations. It doesn't happen. So anyway, go ahead, Ashley. You can play the video.
It's funny. Here we go.
But as it stands right now, I don't have anything to work with. So
you got it. Thank you very much. We will kick it right.
Okay. So he says he has nothing to work with. You might want to stop that.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually.
He says he has nothing to work with, so he's never heard of intelligent design. He's never heard of the cosmological argument. He hasn't heard the moral argument for God or anything like that. Oh, yes, he has. He's just suppressing the truth and unrighteousness. That's what he's doing.
Yeah. So he's heard all of those arguments. That's the thing. He's heard the arguments for Jesus too. I think that's kind of a crazy thing to take the position after you've heard the arguments for Jesus. I think that's just I don't think it's honest. We have so much evidence for Jesus.
And then they get on the World Wide Web and pretend like we haven't heard you get this evidence, have this evidence to you, presented to you over and over and over again on the Atheist Experience, on your Patreon project, and in these Google Hangouts or whatever. We've seen people provide evidence to him all the time. So when he gets on here and says that no one's ever provided any evidence for him, he's lying through his teeth, and we all know it.
Yeah. Well, even when, like, just a little while ago when Dan was on there, the thing is, when I said we have 33 Christian sources and 9 secular sources within 150 years of Jesus supporting a lot of the elements of the New Testament, even if we just piece together the stuff that we have from non-Christians, that's enough for us to be believers, even if that's all we had. Okay. People like Josephus, even if we only had a few people like that, guess what? We've got enough. And so really there's no, we've been given both a general and a special revelation.
What about Simon Greenleaf, who, and I talked about this on his channel before, a lawyer that put the resurrection to the test and came out with the conclusion, that the resurrection was just as historical as any other event that's ever happened. Mm-hmm. And then what about Lee Strobel, who started off as an atheist, and I want the atheists to pay attention to this. He was a starch atheist who put the resurrection to the test, came out as a theist. Mm-hmm. That's the difference when you know you got an atheist who's being intellectually honest about what's being put in front of them versus a liar who's like, I see that phone there. I see it functioning, but that is not a phone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, Lee Strobel actually came by church a few years ago. Yeah, it was a while ago. He came on Easter Sunday, and he spoke to us, and he gave us all a copy of one of his books. So he Case for Easter was the book I got from him. He actually follows me on Twitter. I like Lee Strobel. I've read a few of his books. He wrote a book on miracles too, which is really good.
Did you see Nicky Cruz? Do you know who he is?
No, I don't think so.
Nicky Cruz is an ex-gangbanger. I think the movie. I don't know if it's West Side Story or it's something along those lines. Was inspired by his life or whatever. And he was a hardcore gangbanger who actually became a believer and actually travels the country giving people his testimony about how he came to Christ. So he would be up there like us, Lee Strobel, but I didn't meet Lee, but I met him.
Yeah, no, that's neat. I haven't. Yeah, I have a few people I definitely want to meet. Like I would like to meet William Lane Craig. Definitely would like to meet Sean McDowell. Josh McDowell, Sean McDowell's dad. Who else and Hugh Ross. I mean, it's cool because I've had him on my channel. He's going to come on my channel again pretty soon, so I'm excited about that. So
you gotta get William to come on here.
Say it again.
It'd be awesome if you can get William Lane Craig to come on your platform, and then Matt Dillahunty
Oh my gosh,
in a debate.
host a debate between William Lane Craig won't debate somebody without a PhD. He said that, and so
he's smart for doing that.
So so I don't think he would debate Matt Dillahunty, even if we could try to set something up like that. So
actually, Matt Dillahunty would love to debate William Lane Craig, and I'm glad William Lane Craig has some high standards, because these atheists, they got this criteria saying that if you're not qualified to debate them, then you're not worth their time. It's good that we got people in our community that has that kind of education, where you can say, you want to know what? You want to debate me? You need to go get an education. You need to go get a PhD. If you ain't got it, you won't be debating it. Because all Dillahunty is going to do is keep saying, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. So what? I'm not convinced. That is not an argument that God doesn't exist. That just means that you're being hard-headed and being stubborn.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm not convinced is well, and that's the thing, when there's so much evidence, and then to keep saying that, it's just not, I mean, again, like what I showed you, if you guys are just joining here, this is Hugh Ross's new book on climate change. Hugh Ross is very concerned about climate change, and so am I. I mean, we've got a lot of evidence that humans are contributing to climate change. But what I want you guys just to notice, and I showed this to G-Man right when we started, I want you to notice this chart right here. This is the volatility. Okay, this is from hundreds of thousands of years ago. This goes back 400,000 years ago, and all the volatility in the climate. And then suddenly, 10,000 years ago, look at this. It just goes straight across. No volatility in the climate. 10,000 years is when, because I've always wondered, why don't we have much evidence of humans prior to 10,000 years ago? Why is it just a few caves with some paintings and things like that? And now I kind of discovered, well, they couldn't form civilizations when the climate was so volatile. They had to constantly be hunting and gathering and moving around.
You want to know another problem that evolutionists have too, when they go about dating the age of the Earth and dating fossils? A lot of their dating methods, if you were to date an old rock, the rock would come out to be, according to them, would be millions of years old. But then if you use that same methodology, like in a skeleton, where somebody died 100 years ago or something like that, they'll claim that bone is like millions and millions and millions and millions of years old. They have a lot of problems with their technology that they have on how they go about determining the age of the Earth, the age of fossils, and things like that. They can't explain why red blood cells are being found in dinosaur bones. They can't explain stuff like that, and they want to pretend like it doesn't exist. And if you talk about it too much, they'll mock you and say, I'm not convinced.
Yeah, that's the thing, that I'm not convinced, and that puts the burden of proof, of course, on the theist.
The burden of proof is on the one making a claim. If they're making a claim, the burden is on them.
Well, that's why a lot of them say they lack a belief rather than say they don't believe, because then they can try to switch it again over to us.
Right.
So I was able to skip over this commercial.
Okay, good.
Okay, so here we go.
So the floor is all yours, gentlemen.
Okay. Well, Matt, I agree that we're coming at this from the standpoint, more from a discussion standpoint than a collegiate.
I want to let him speak for just a couple minutes, because it's kind of unfair to look at everything from Matt's perspective, and the poor Ben hasn't gotten to have any airtime yet. Exactly. So let me just turn him on for a second here.
Debate.
Sure.
And so my intent, as I stated at the outset of my original opening statement, was twofold. Number one, I believe that there are not good arguments from religious skepticism to show that God doesn't exist. And number two, that I also happen to believe that there are several good arguments, and one in particular that I'll employ for this evening, to show that God does exist. And so my opening statement merely was for the purpose of setting the first point in that twofold approach. I'm wondering if we could agree that it's not up to anybody to prove that there isn't a God, that until such time as there's a good justification, belief in a God isn't warranted. It's not like...
See, it's the opposite. It's the opposite. See, he's saying he doesn't have to prove that there's no God, and that he shouldn't even believe. Now, 93% of the people in the world believe that there is a God. Okay, it's a puny little 7% who don't believe, who don't accept that.
I mean, it's really puny, really puny.
Gee, man, I like that. Okay,
so I don't think he's in the minority. I honestly don't know if he knows that. My goodness.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You'd think that I mean, the default position is to believe there's a God. Even little kids are understanding of that. Very, very early on, they've shown that there's little kids just know that there's something greater than themselves out there. And so to deny it is just really, it's suppressing the truth. That's all it is. And so, okay. Are you still there, G-Man?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to go back to Ben here. Let's let Ben hear him out for a couple minutes because he's got some pretty good stuff.
It's not like you're justified in believing in God until I prove it wrong. Nobody's justified in believing anything, including a God proposition, until they have a good argument for it and evidence.
See, look at this whole twist on words too. A God proposition. What do you think of that, G-Man?
I think our Bibles is quite specific about God and his nature, who he is, how he exists, and how he goes about showing his existence. What he does, and what a lot of atheists like to do, is they like to talk about God as if he's an it, and we don't have any information about this guy. And when he does that, again, he's controlling the narrative, where he says that, you know, where he can talk about somebody completely and totally different other than the God we actually worship. So again, with him, it's a lot of word salad when you're dealing with him, and I mean a lot.
Yeah, I think a lot of times too is they like to take God and put him on our level. And so I've had atheists say, well, if God exists, he knows what it would take for me to be convinced. And why doesn't he show up right now in my room, on command or something like that? And I think you don't have the right mindset. God isn't on anybody's time. He doesn't need us. We need him. It's the whole, beginning of the truth and knowledge is fear of the Lord.
Exactly. One of the questions that I used to love to ask the atheists on my GTV channel was this, and they didn't like it too much. I asked them, how is it that when a horse has a baby, the horse is able to walk like almost immediately? It takes it a couple of minutes to learn how to walk. But when it comes to us intelligent human beings, it takes a baby, 6 to 8 months to learn? Sometimes
a lot longer. Yeah, sometimes a year.
You know what I mean? But things are supposed to be getting better over time, according to them. So that's ridiculous.
So yeah, and I see Gavin. Gavin's got this whole God proposition. What did he say? Where did Gavin go? Jay Dyer debated Dillahunty. I don't know if Jay Dyer's have you heard Jay Dyer before? Okay, yeah. Jay Dyer is I think he's Eastern Orthodox. He's a Christian, but he doesn't have the exact same views I have. But he's got a huge following on YouTube. So
okay, never heard of him before though.
Okay, so let's go back. We'll go back to our thing here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm willing to allow that to be the grounds for discussion, religious discussion and inquiry into the subject of God's existence in the context of this discussion. So I think that that's a good place for us to begin.
So how do we start? How do we begin? Like you say you have one argument. I'm sure you have many, and I'm sure you have lots of reasons, but you had one in particular. I have no idea why it wasn't presented.
Can I get my argument?
Present it now.
What's that?
Can I get my argument? And by the way, I'm quoting the Bible thumping Weenet. Quote, God has presented himself to me in such a way that I cannot deny his existence. End quote. You can continue the video. Yeah,
that's exactly what I would say for myself too. My main reason for believing in God, actually, I didn't even have a Bible in the house. I had this little, I had a little teeny miniature Bible, but I didn't have a full one in the house. I had like a half of one with just the New Testament and Psalms and Proverbs. And so it wasn't the Bible that brought me to God. It was Jesus that brought me to the Bible. He made himself obvious. And so,
exactly.
And he will to anybody. You guys,
it's obvious to Matt right now.
Just know that he will make himself obvious, and it might take time. I mean, it took 20 years before I was able to really feel like I had the kind of experiences that I had. So just because right now maybe you're 25 and you're thinking, well, that means that puts me out into the 40s. Yeah, it might be. That might be what happens, but you have to keep trusting him.
Can I respond to a comment that's in the comment section real quick?
Oh, sure.
Can you do me a favor? Could you minimize this and highlight this comment here? As the comment says that G-Man is not capable of critical thinking. Could you do me a favor and just okay, thank you. Actually, correct me if I'm wrong. Critical thinking is when you are thinking critically about a proposition or an idea or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you do that.
Critical when it comes to atheism and the atheistic ideas. Your arguments, I'm critical about their ideas about, whether or not God isn't real, subjective morality, evolution, Big Bang cosmology, whether or not rape is okay in certain situations. Oh, I'm extremely critical about those things. So when a person sits there and says that I'm not capable of critical thinking, I think what that person is doing, just correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's quoting a mantra, I think that person's quoting a mantra because they just say it as if we haven't heard this a billion times already. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously you're very critical of a lot of different theories, and so you have to, and that's one of the things, you have to be critical of a lot of these different theories. So let's go back. Oh wait, I forgot to hit the. Okay, let me just.
My girlfriend's watching. Stupid whore energy's watching.
Your girlfriend.
Yeah, I claimed her for myself. That's my girlfriend.
She's funny, actually. She's pretty funny. She's got a good sense of humor. All right, here we go.
Can't hear nothing. I can't hear nothing.
Oh, you can't hear it?
Nope.
Oh, shoot. Okay. All right. So he's about, sorry. Thank you for telling me that. I thought I was playing it. Hold on just 1 second. Let me not share the screen and come back and share the screen. I forgot to hit that volume button or whatever it's called. All right. Share screen. The audio. There we go.
We got to get through this because I can smell your chicken in the oven.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. You actually, I'm going to make chicken. What's it called? Chicken drumsticks, drumettes.
Cool.
So I make them in an air fryer.
Ontological argument for God's existence, the argument for God from his being, but it asserts a slightly different point. The purpose of the axiomatic argument for God's existence is to show that God exists in every single world that we might conceive of to exist, and this would include all possible worlds that we might imagine. And as it turns out, because the concept of God, at least at the conceptual level, is entirely unerasable on strong grounds, I think, that therefore we're not in a position to airbrush a divine causal beginning to any world that we might imagine for the sake of any argument. That it's just simply not rational to do so. And so
well, what's the argument?
The argument essentially, I might refer to it as the ever-pending birthday. Imagine that you, Matt Dillahunty, have walked into a room only to encounter an infinite row of tumbling dominoes. Each falling tile collapses a subsequent member, causing the preceding domino to plummet towards the earth. And each successive domino takes all of 1 second to accomplish its inevitable collision with the floor. And now imagine that the row of dominoes is utterly beginningless, leading to a final domino standing near your foot. Bending down, you notice that the domino bears an inscription which reads the exact date of your birth. And so you then begin to wonder, if the set of dominoes is infinitely long, how much time will it take for my birthday domino to collapse? And of course, the answer is unavoidable. The tile would never fall. Consequently, that would imply that you could never be born. And so this means that in any world that we imagine, none of these worlds can be eternal in the past. Some initial trigger has to set the world in motion. And so this essentially means that the initial cause that brought this world that we live in into existence, any finite cause itself requires some sort of a causal parent. And so therefore, since the cause that triggered the other causes, we have to inquire into what is the founding reason for this. If the reason is something which lies outside of the cause itself, then it and not the cause is the real reason why the world exists. And so
I just want to, I think that might be probably where I'm going to stop sharing that and come back. G-Man, I think that argument itself is kind of similar to Thomas Aquinas's argument when Thomas Aquinas talks about the uncaused cause and the unmoved mover, and this idea that you can't have an infinite regress. The buck has to stop somewhere. And so we know that since there's a beginning to the universe, that we know that the buck did stop. And so we know that there's something behind that. And I think that's sort of what he was getting at a little bit. And he also says, because we know that there can't be, we know that in our own life, if there's a beginning and there's every beginning has a cause, then there must be an uncaused cause.
I don't use that argumentation because I don't fully understand it. I've heard other people use it. Some really smart people use it. As a matter of fact, I think Matt Bell, before he got arrested, used that argumentation.
When did he get arrested for? Who's that?
I've never used it.
Who's Matt Bell?
Okay. Matt Bell was a person that was involved in a great debate. He was a very rude Christian that was in our community, and he got caught being a pedophile. So they locked him.
That's terrible.
He was really rude, but he was a really smart guy, though.
Yeah. Well, even if you just think about it this way, and I like how Lisa Quintana, she's been on my channel before, but she talks about mind before matter. Mind always comes before matter. And so if we have the matter of the universe, there had to be a mind that pre-existed it. And so, and even if you look at the earth and look at the intentionality in our nature, I honestly don't, I just, this whole idea that I ride around on my bike and I look at nature, I look at the mountains, I've seen beaches. I mean, not on my bike, I haven't, but I mean, all of this beauty in nature and the Northern Borealis and it's amazing. I mean, we should be so thankful to God for all of the beauty that he's given us.
Well, that's the thing. Me and you are great. Okay, you have to be grateful in order to be thankful. And you and I are grateful for his creation. There are some people that walk in this earth that are not grateful to God. They hate him. So they're going to deny his existence as often as they can, so they don't have to deal with the reality of what's going on here in the world or whatever. So,
yeah. So, well, I think that might be. Should we have some closing comments and thoughts on the whole debate that we just listened to?
We haven't really heard the whole thing, but as far as Matt Dillahunty's argumentation, again, it's not just him; it's anybody who does this, where they create this narrative. Where they tell you, SJ, and they tell me that we must use science in order to prove that something is or is not. And no, you don't always got to do that. We can talk about faith. We can use philosophy. We can use history. When a person tries to muffle you down and just say that it's going to be science, they're setting you up for disaster and for failure. You know what I mean? They're very closed-minded. They're suppressing a ton of information. Like, for example, SJ, you and I, well, actually, I'm going to talk about myself because I don't know about you. I don't have a degree in biology. I don't have a degree in chemistry. I don't have a degree in zoology. Like, I'm not like this scientific buff or whatever, but I know my history, though. You understand what I'm saying? So if I can show you historical evidence for Christ existing, the events that happened in the church actually happening, the Exodus and all this other stuff, then I can make a better argument for God existing that way. But when they try to make everybody try to do it scientifically, it is a level of intellectual dishonesty that is just mind-numbing. You know, not everybody understands Big Bang. Not everybody understands evolution. Not everybody understands like the little teeny details about science or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, for example, I could put you on my channel all day, every day, and have you talk about this secular, not the religious, the secular reasons on why we believe that Jesus actually existed. I can bring you on my channel and talk about subjective and objective morality and why objective morality will prove that God exists. I can bring you on my channel and have you talk all day long about the resurrection, the persecution of the church, and why it proves that God exists. But I'm not going to demand that you use science and then pretend like everybody else use science to actually do this. To me, it's just intellectually dishonest with an opening statement. And I probably would have spent a good 8 minutes calling him intellectually dishonest in my opening statement, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're reminding me of something that I think is really important too. One of the things that's really cool about the Bible that I think distinguishes it from other books. Now, it's distinguished from the Muslim faith because the Quran was written by one man, one period of time. Okay, the Bible was written by 40 different authors over 1,500 years in multiple languages, and it's remarkably coherent. And just to kind of speak to what you're saying, you could be the most simplistic person or the most complex person. You could have an IQ that's 83, or you might have an IQ that's 150. You can be all different levels. And when you look at the Bible, it's fascinating to whatever level you are. It speaks to everybody's levels. And that's what's so impressive about it. That's what's really amazing. It tells us how complex God's very complex character. I mean, we didn't really understand God in the Old Testament, but then suddenly through Jesus, we really got to see this is love. This is and he exemplified how he wants us to be and how we have to bear our own crosses. And Christianity is the only faith that really explains the human experience and all the suffering that you see.
You know what I think too, just to add, not to take away from anything that you said, I think the reason why some people might have a problem with some of the actions that took place in the Old Testament is that they don't understand God's holiness. They don't understand righteousness. And I don't think they understand judgment. Today, in the church today, I think I ain't gonna say all of them, but a lot of our churches, unfortunately, has presented this Barney character that goes, I love you, you love me, we're a happy family. And everybody just think God is all about love, 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 love. And they forget that he's holy and that he's just and that that because he's holy, he must punish sin. You know what I mean? And that God knows it all, and that God set a plan out where he's going to use a nation to bring about a Messiah to save as many people as possible. You know what I mean? And until the church gets back to presenting God all of his characteristics, not just his sovereignty, not just his love, not just his mercy, but talking about all of his characteristics, people are still going to be confused about his nature, I think. So what you said was 100% correct. I just wanted to add to that so that people can understand why some people are, kind of going backwards a little bit when it comes to God's nature, because all they constantly hear is love, 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 love all the time. God is fire too.
I like how C.S. Lewis, if you guys haven't read Mere Christianity, you have to read that book. But C.S. Lewis put it kind of similarly. He said the Old Testament gives us an account of God's chosen people. God chose the Jewish people to bring us to Jesus. And God chose to work through the Jewish people and then eventually through the Gentiles. And that was all predicted in Isaiah and these other books. But the really interesting thing is how C.S. Lewis put it. He said, the Old Testament gives us an account of how God picked his chosen people and the hammering process. And I think that it's because he's true that they kept going. I mean, they kept falling away from him. Even when they saw Moses part the Red Seas in front of them, they saw all this kind of miracles, and they were getting bread every day during the Exodus. And yet they still were worshiping these golden calves, and they were still just not obeying. And it's you look back on that and it's mind boggling. You're looking at that kind of stuff. But
God can demonstrate him, and that's perfect. Yeah, and during the Exodus, he parted the Red Sea. Just because God does something like that, don't mean you're going to follow him and love him or anything. Atheists act as if, and I keep telling them this over and over and over again. If I prove to you that God exists, you're still going to hell. I'm sorry, but it's deeper than that. The Bible says that we're sinners, and that we deserve the righteous wrath of God because of our sin. But God loved us so much that he sent his only begotten son to this world to die for our sins, to atone for our sins, so that a holy God went and looked like a God that just allowed sin to happen without dealing with it. He poured his wrath on Jesus. You know what I mean? And when he did that, it covered our sin. And that's what they don't get. They believe that, you just proved to me that God exists, I'll become a Christian. No, you won't. You'll still go to the lake of fire. You got to believe in Jesus. You got to believe that you're a sinner. That's what the real issue comes down to, not whether or not God exists or not.
Yeah, and repent. Yep. And so that's the key. And you realize, it's probably going to have to be a daily repent, because nobody's perfect and everyone makes mistakes. And maybe at the end of each day, you say, okay, kind of blew it today again. God, if you could help me out tomorrow, maybe I'll be a little bit better tomorrow. And God is so incredibly patient and kind that, because I think about myself, I can barely, I've gotten off Twitter quite a bit. I've been on Twitter quite a bit less this last week. I decided I was going to really cut back on it, and it's made me much happier. And I realize it's because there's so many people on Twitter who just are, especially this atheist crew that just come after me like crazy on Twitter. And so I thought to myself, how does God, God's been dealing with these people for thousands of years. He has so much patience. I can't handle a few years of this. And he's like,
well, think about this. You're an educator, and you teach on the college level, so they can't comprehend how somebody like you could be a Christian, because you're too intelligent to be a Christian.
I think that people don't realize how Christianity speaks to. The more I learn about Christianity, it's really exciting, actually. All the books that I've bought on people writing from different perspectives about Christianity and Jesus and those kind of things, I just love it. I think it's fascinating, and I think that people really should do their work. And a long time ago when I first got on Twitter, this atheist challenged me. He said, I want you to read, if you read Bertrand Russell, Why I'm Not a Christian, I will read Mere Christianity. I'm like, I was kind of scared. I thought, oh man, what are the atheists going to say? And so then I read the book. I read this article from Bertrand Russell, and I was like, is that the best they got? That's just crazy. Anyone believes that? Who's falling for that garbage? That's the worst argument I ever heard. And I thought, if that's the best they have, boy,
I look at it like this. Imagine reading that book when you're angry at God and you are very frustrated with him. Then everything in that book will start to make sense with you. You know what I mean? Because now you're probably misotheistic in your thinking. And then you read a book like that, and now you're going to say, you want to know what? I identify with this person. I'm an atheist. And they get mad when I say this, that shame. But the majority of the people watching us that claim to be atheists are not really atheists. They're just angry. They're kicking and screaming, going, "God, give me that ice cream that I prayed for." You know what I mean? So
I think there's a variety of reasons why people are atheists. I do actually have to say there's a couple of people I've heard in on other people's channels that they feel like they went through a really hard time and God didn't answer their prayers. And so in some cases, I can really empathize with them. And I feel like, okay, you feel like God didn't answer your prayers. Well, you don't realize that God answers all prayers. It's just that it might not be the answer you wanted. And so
say that again, please, because that's very true. Say that again.
Yeah, God answers every prayer, but the answer might not be what you wanted. He might want you to, you know, if you go back and you look at the globe studies, and I've mentioned this before, and you look at in the world is the most suffering. Okay, so the most suffering, a lot of the suffering's in Africa because there's a lot of poverty and there's a lot of, you know, pretty bad things going on sometimes between different groups of, say, Muslims capturing Christians and those sorts of things, and in some places like Nigeria. But you see that kind of stuff, and then you look at the globe surveys, and it says, well, it just happens to be the people with the highest levels of humane orientation, which is benevolence and being kind to other people. Also, most of those countries are in Africa. And so you say to yourself, and in Ireland suffered through a horrible potato famine in the 1840s. Its population went from 8 million people down to 5 million people. And it's because a lot of people either died or they emigrated. And so whereas high levels of, Ireland was kind of a suffering background, and they have high levels of humane orientation. And the places with the lowest levels are those like West Germany and other countries in Northern and Western Europe. They have the lowest humane orientation. And so it's the places with the least suffering. Guess what? They're not as caring for other people. That's kind of scary. But now you see why God does what he does.
Exactly. Joshua Howard says in the live chat, does repenting make you a better person? Okay, so if I was to answer your question, repent means basically it's a change of mind. If you was going in one direction, you know, you change your mind and you're going back in the previous direction that you was going in, right? So let's say I was a murderer. You know, let's say I was like a Jack the Ripper type person. I went out there at night and I killed women at night. Then I realized what I was doing was wrong, and I stopped doing it. And I went back on the straight and narrow and stopped doing things like that. Of course, repenting makes you a better person.
Yeah, it does. And I think also if you just wake up every day and you make a habit of, okay, what am I grateful for today? And you just think about the people in your life, you know, not the things, it's the people. So who am I grateful for today? And you know, how can I make today a little bit better than yesterday? How can I be just a little bit nicer? If you work like that through your whole life, by the end of your life, you'd probably be a pretty decent person. I mean, you'll at least get a little closer to God. So
if you want to be a decent person, you definitely got to keep your fellow man in mind. One of the things that we learn in scripture, it says that we're supposed to love our neighbor. You know, Christians, when we wake up, a lot of times we're thinking about people and what we can do to try to help that person have a better outlook in life. Maybe we can help them with their bills, depending on their situation or whatever. Maybe sometimes we're thinking, I really got 5 of these. You know what I mean? I can give one of these away to somebody who's been looking for this forever or whatever. You know what I mean? That's the lifestyle of a Christian. We're actually trying to go out there and be loving towards our neighbor. Whereas the unregenerated person, the person who doesn't know Christ, the people who are trying on with their own strength to be good people, are just falling short constantly, because instead of you helping other people, you're putting other people down all the time while claiming to be a good person. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's the thing. And so just realizing your own faults is so important too. Just realizing, nobody's perfect. You could try to get a little closer, but your actions won't earn you. You cannot earn your way to heaven. That's also another way that Christianity is different from other religions. Other religions think you can earn your way to heaven, and God is keeping account of all that. God told us as Christians, no, you don't get to do that. Your faith, your works will be an outpouring from your faith, but it's your faith that is the key.
But you want to know the funny thing is, all the atheists watching this knows that these are good characteristics and they are good traits. They know that these are the things that Christians practice, but they still hate them.
Yeah, well, you guys, if you are an atheist and you're listening to this, and you're ready to dump atheism, you're ready to kick it to the curb, maybe just go read the book of John and see if God speaks to you through that. And so,
yeah, if you got a smartphone, you can go to YouTube. You can get it for free. You can type in the Gospel of John, KJV, or whatever translation you want. You can get your headphones when you're laying down in your bed, and you can just listen to that. You know what I mean? And it will do phenomenal things for your spirit and your soul. And it will tell you what you need to do to get saved too, believe it or not. So,
yeah. Yeah. Well, G-Man, let's go ahead and we'll end this, but let me see it. What are you working on now that people, you said you have a video tonight that you're doing, right?
Oh yeah. 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to be on Christopher Monti's YouTube channel. I'm going to be on a hot seat. I'm going to allow the atheists for about an hour or so to ask me some questions. And, because they feel like I'm avoiding certain things. So I'm going to let them ask me some questions, and I'll do my best with answering them. And then immediately after that, I don't know if you're going to like this part, Shay. I'm going to be talking to one of the members of the Geek Room. His name is Traded Atheist.
I was just going to bring them up because I keep noticing it's like they have a little, like they're living in their mind. I think you have a little apartment in the Geek Room's mind.
Yeah, they're bullies. All they want to do is make fun of me. So I made a YouTube video, Shay, claiming that I don't think they can sit down and have an intelligent conversation. So I challenged one of the members, particularly the Traded Atheist, to come on Monty's channel and have an intelligent conversation with me. So we're going to be doing that on his channel immediately after the hot seat. And then we're just going to be talking in general. So
okay, that sounds exciting. Yeah, I'll check that out. Actually, I'll definitely check that out. So tomorrow I'm going to be having a guy called Rene. He's from Germany. I think he's in his early 20s right now, 21, 22, something like that. He's an atheist, and he's going to come on my channel. And we're going to talk about German culture. And, I just told you that thing about suffering and how West Germany's at the worst levels of humane orientation. So I'm definitely going to bring that up to him tomorrow and see what his take on that is. My brother lives in Germany now too.
Considering their history, it's not really surprising.
Yeah. So I want to see, actually, we're going to talk about history, and we're going to talk also about the difference between, say, the Catholics in Germany and the Protestants, because the Catholics tend to occupy the South and the Protestants tend to occupy the North, and their churches are a lot different. The Catholics have these gigantic, beautiful churches, and the Protestants just have kind of like these little ones. And I wonder if the fact that they don't have these awe-inspiring churches might be something that has led people sort of away from God. You don't have this awe-inspiring place like the Catholics set up. So I think the Catholics might be onto something with the size of the church.
I don't know about that. Actually, no. As a matter of fact, I would like to see Christians actually worshiping in their homes again and getting away from this idea and being in these stained glass buildings and these beautiful cathedrals, because all of it's going to be destroyed when Christ returns. Every last one of them.
So, that's true. We don't know when that's going to occur, but we sure know that there are some pending signs that people might want to notice, like that Israel was resurrected after 1878 years, and we're moving towards a capital in Jerusalem, and all we're waiting for now is a third temple. You guys watch for that.
That's right, and we're waiting for the global dictator to get here because the world's already been divided. So one day, me and you need to do a prophecy show. Next time,
I would like that.
I would love to do nothing but prophecy with you one day.
Well, there's a lot of I would love to do a prophecy show. Maybe we should do that next weekend.
We can do that if you want.
Yeah, I'd speak to the prophecies that have been fulfilled, and then the ones that we're waiting for, and the signs that we've seen. So all we're looking for somebody to come mainly out of the Middle East. The Antichrist, he's going to have some sort of a scar that indicates that he had fought some sort of a battle, and it was like a fatal blow, but he didn't die. Okay. That's something that we're looking for. And he's going to go into the third temple. And so we know that he's going to be the abomination.
Never heard that one before, so this should be good.
You never heard that?
A lot of different views about like where the Antichrist might come from and what's going to happen in his career. So
yeah, let's talk about that.
That kind of thing.
I'll review between now and next week. I'm going to read the book of Revelation over again. And I'm going to read Rob. I have to go to Rob Rose. He's got an article that he wrote up on Revelation. So I'll read that stuff this week. And then you and I can have this chat.
Yeah, cool. That'd be great.
Fun.
That'd be great. Yeah. And maybe we can get a third person in here to talk about eschatology too. But if you get somebody, you got to be careful, because some people are so into it that if they hear you say something that's contrary to what you believe, it'll turn into a debate. So you might want to get somebody that can express what they believe without them debating.
Yeah, I better actually double check on the Antichrist source. For some reason, I'm thinking he's supposed to come out of the Middle East, but somewhere. But I'll double check even if that's in there. If it's not in there, then I'm not going to say that.
He's going to have to come out of somewhere for the Jews. Well, not the Jews. For people to accept him as the fake Jewish Messiah. You know what I mean? he is not going to be one of the presidents. I definitely don't believe he'll be one of the presidents of the U.S. because America's not even mentioned. You know what I mean, in Revelation or anything like that. So.
Yeah, but you know what's really fascinating is we're an outpouring of, or an outgrowth of the Roman Empire. And so Daniel, in the book of Daniel, there were 4 empires, and we're essentially in this Roman Empire outpouring. And so so we know, I mean, all this stuff has been, there's so much that's been fulfilled. We're gonna have a really good conversation next week.
Definitely.
Well, great.
We'll talk about like the 2 beasts and who we think they are, because I'm going to let you know in advance. I believe the second beast, I believe, that comes out of the sea, I think, or the earth. I think the second one that comes out of the earth, I think, is supposed to be the false prophet. So, which is the Pope of Rome. It's going to be the Pope.
Oh man.
So
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
All right there, G-Man. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. I want to say thank you to everybody for coming on. Please come back, listen to G-Man tonight. Go listen to his channel. Subscribe to his channel if you haven't done it yet. And please come back tomorrow at noon, because I'm going to have Eastern. I'm going to have Renee from Germany on here. So, and
right.
Susan, yeah, feel free to practice your German, Susan. You can, if you want to join us, maybe, I don't know, we can talk to Renee about that too. So, okay. Thank you so much.
You guys
God bless.
Oh,
when I do Psalm 23, I forgot to mention why I'd like to have Psalm 23 is, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. So that's how I'm going to end my streams from now on.
Good. Did you end it yet?
Yep, I'm just about to.
Okay, cool.
All right, there we go.